Somalis. What's not to like?
Why do we have to get out of here? Stay in your place.
Get out! This is our business.
You're very nice.
Out of my neighborhood.
Very nice.
Get out, you guys. Get out.
Fuck out of here, man. You cannot come into the community and be doing that.
Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of my
Sir,
neighborhood.
no.
Get out. Fuck you say. Get out. Out of here, man. Get out.
Where you coming from?
You need to get out. You need to get out. Get out. Get out, motherfucker. Get out.
Sir,
Get out. Go.
can you tell me where the transportation
Get the fuck
company
out
is?
of my neighborhood. Leave. No. Fucking $1 million.
They just ripped off Minnesota for about $1 billion. And that's not including the legal welfare and other programs that they have been on since the 1990s, when the US and UN with Operation Restore Hope unfortunately got involved in a Somali clan conflict. And they did it in such a way that it caused them to show up in places like Minnesota and, of course, magically transform into regular apple pie Americans. Now, you can thank Ted Kennedy and Elizabeth Holtzman for pushing for the Refugee Act of 1980. It was passed by both chambers and eventually signed by President Jimmy Carter, but more on that later. So you have a foreign ethnic group that comes in and takes advantage of the generous hospitality of a high-trust, largely Scandinavian stock population of Minnesota, who simply just wants to help because it's the nice thing to do. Moves on to get financially raped, and of course in some cases literally as well. And it's not just in Minnesota. This is everywhere, not even just in the US. It's the same in Sweden, where places like Rinkeby outside of Stockholm is known as Little Mogadishu for a reason. That's where gangs like Death Patrol have become famous for their incredible ability to integrate seamlessly into Swedish society. Back in the U.S., Columbus, Ohio, to be specific, two Somali brothers redeemed more than $10 million in SNAP and WIC benefits over the last 9 years. That's more than $1 million per year. How much money do you make a year? We are just an ATM for these people, no matter if they are in Sweden or St. Paul. There are now also reports about a multi-million-dollar Medicaid fraud scheme in Maine by Dr. Abdullahi Ali, who ran Gateway Community Services, a health services contractor. Dr. Ali ran for president, coincidentally, of Jubaland, a semi-autonomous region of Somalia, last year, and publicly boasted at the time in Somali media of funding a militia there, with proceeds that was quote-unquote earned in the United States. It's also in the United States where Maine magazine honored this good doctor as one of the, quote, 50 Mainers creating a brighter future for the state. And in 2023, Dr. Ali was awarded the Maine Black Excellence Award. It's not just that they commit fraud. Their very existence in our civilization is what is the fraud. It's fake, it's synthetic, it's a marketing ploy about what great citizens they are and how much they contribute to the GDP and how their very presence is essential for diversity because diversity itself is a virtue. No, the reality is they are leeches. They're parasites. They're feeding on the American carcass like scavengers. But they also do it many times with the help of people like Amy Bach, who's accused of being the mastermind of Minnesota's biggest fraud scheme called Feeding Our Future, that blew up to be a $250 million hustle during the COVID times. But keep in mind, that wouldn't be possible if these people weren't in the country. Also wouldn't be possible if it was that we had to solve for inequities and help out supposedly disparaged racial groups, anti-racism. But why are they here? And who let them in? That is the more important question, because if we don't solve that and figure that out before or after, these people are kicked out. Those who let them in will simply just do it again with the laws that exists that allowed them to come in to begin with. Somalis didn't just find themselves in the US or Sweden one day. Same with any other ethnic group. The white majority American population didn't just one day wake up and said, let's bring in so many brown people that my white grandchildren will become a minority in their own homelands one day. No, they were told that opening the borders would not cause a demographic upset. They were also told that it was the right thing to do, the moral thing to do. Replacement of this scale in any other nations would be called a genocide, because that's exactly what it is. There is incredible waste and fraud with Somalis, as it is with Indians and many other ethnic groups, as they come into wealthy countries that they do not give a shit about. People have been warning about Somali fraud for decades, but it never got the attention that it deserved until about a month ago. But if you don't dig deep all the way back to why Somalis are in the US to begin with, it's nothing but a distraction until the next scandal on the internet or in the news show up and everyone forgets about it. The most important takeaway for you here is that it's a legal framework that enabled all of this fraud to take place. Everything up to the very last step in this process was 100% legal. Somalis are just a symptom of the problem. And it is a problem that has to be stopped, obviously. But if you don't figure out why or maybe where your ship is leaking, you can man the pumps around the clock, but you will still keep taking in water and eventually you will capsize. What you need to understand is that someone is scuttling America. And they have been doing it with policy changes, with laws, with acts, bills, and bureaucracy over many decades. But perhaps more importantly, by seeding a liberal moral framework in academia, in news media, and in politics.
We have more refugees per capita than any other state. That's not just morally a good thing, it's our economic and cultural future. This beautiful diversity we see out in Worthington when I'm there, you see 50 languages spoken in the school.
We're talking about decades of anti-white mimetic warfare before the internet even existed. Now, this is the boring part, and it's made that way intentionally so that you will take no interest in fighting your own extinction. This is designed so that you will check out a drab bureaucrat droning on about some bill that basically just makes you fall asleep. So are you paying attention? Because this is how we got here. In 1948, there was the Displaced Persons Act, which was to help Europeans displaced after World War II. Then it was the Refugee Relief Act of 1953, followed by the Hong Kong Parole Program of 1962 and the Migration and Refugee Assistance Act of 1962. The Hart-Celler Act of 1965, the probably most seminal point in replacing white Europeans in America, and probably the most well-known. But there are many others, like the Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966. In 1967, the U.S. signs the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Indo-Chinese Immigration and Refugee Act of 1975. In 1977, the Immigration and Naturalization Service created a special office of refugee and parole to address a global refugee crisis and implement refugee policies. The Refugee Act of 1980, signed by President Jimmy Carter, that we mentioned earlier, had significantly severe impacts for the white European population in America. But this wasn't just a Democrat issue. President Ronald Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986, which granted amnesty to 3 million illegal migrants. In 1990, you had the Lautenberg Amendment, which established a reduced evidentiary burden for applications for refugee status from certain categories of people, primarily Jews from the Soviet Union. People requesting asylum was at a record high in late 1980s and early 90s. And a new division was created with a Asylum Corps of immigration officers. And in fact, 7 specialized asylum offices opened up in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Newark, Arlington, Miami, and Houston. In 1997, it was the Nicaraguan Adjustment and Central American Relief Act, followed by the Haitian Refugee Immigrant Fairness Act in 1998. Legal immigration to the U.S. has been at about 1 million new lawful permanent residents annually since the 1990s, peaking between 2016 and 2023 with over 1.1 million annually. Then you have the issue of all the federal grant money that is given to these communities by largely the white taxpayer base. And what did the people bring, really? Robbery, riots, rape, and other such fun things? We know about the Jewish groups, such as HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. Their operating budget is around $204 million last year. You also have the Jewish Family Services. They spend about $150 million annually between the different local branches that they have. And they are, of course, partnering with other refugee resettlement groups, but their primary funding is coming from U.S. government grants, which means you are paying to replace yourself. You are paying to genocide yourself. You have other huge organizations like the Church World Services. They spent about $280 million in 2024. The organization World Relief, a global Christian humanitarian organization, has an operating budget close to $200 million for 2024. There are also Catholic agencies that are even more powerful than those just mentioned. Take Catholic Relief Services, with expenses over $1.33 billion last year. Now, their revenue was around $1.5 billion, so someone is pocketing around $170 million along the way. The Jesuit Refugee Service pulled in a more modest $109 million in 2023. This is big business. You can make a lot of money genociding whites with replacement migration programs. But in regards to how the Somalis ended up in Minnesota specifically, the Refugee Acts and Bills is the legal framework, but it's groups like the Lutheran Social Service of Minnesota and Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service that have played a major role in resettling Somali refugees in Minnesota since the 1990s. They're offering them housing, jobs, and so-called integration support as part of federal programs. And this, of course, is why all these benefit programs exist in the state to begin with, that they could take advantage of. The Lutheran World Federation for Refugee Aid spent approximately $44 million on project expenses in 2023. But their total operating expenditure for the Lutheran World Service is about $180 million annually. Their funding comes from government grants from white countries. We're talking about the European Union and the United States. It also comes from UN agencies, like the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR. And the United States is its largest donor, providing around $2 billion annually. That's about 40% of its claimed operating budget. Now, there's some positive signs here. By mid-2025, the UNHCR had only received about 23% of its almost $11 billion appeal. So that is good. But that's just the start, though. Why are they still getting billions of dollars? The International Organization for Migration, IOM, their budget has grown significantly, with needs estimated at $8.2 billion for 2025. That's up from around $3 billion in 2022. The majority of movement of people is from non-white countries to white countries, and that's what the mission is. Back in January, groups like HIAS received a stop work order, which is good. That's a good first step. But I'd say go further. Dissolve them. Make it illegal. Pass a law that says that you can't replace white people, European Americans. And if you make money doing it, it's going to be twice the time served. The case for why replacement migration is genocide needs to be heard. UN Article 2 of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide does define genocide not only simply as killing and harming and creating harsh conditions for an ethnic group, but also states that creating conditions that is preventing births within a group, right? That's what actually has happened with migration. The studies are out. And also, the crime of genocide is creating conditions that is intended to destroy in whole or in part any national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. That is genocide. That's what's happening. Laws have been passed so that NGOs and so-called humanitarian organizations can be given money to replace whites in Europe, America, and the extended white world. We are now looking at extinction as a consequence of these policies, and it has to stop now. All the leeches need to go. All the parasites feeding off the societies built by white people are going to have to go home. And as luck has it, they actually have homelands to return back to. But ours are the only ones that we have, and they are being given away without our consent. Remigration is a humanitarian option because we are at a breaking point. We either fight or we die. We have about 10 years, give or take, and we either remigrate these people or we go extinct. That's our option at this point, and the question is, what side are you on? Now, do make sure that you follow us on our Rumble channel for more Red Ice TV on rumble.com or on X at Red Ice TV. You can, of course, go to redice.tv as well. Tune in to our live streams and shows. Flashback Friday live on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern. No-Go Zone Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. We also do interviews, videos, clips, and Western Warrior is available Tuesdays, exclusive for our supporters and subscribers at redicemembers.com or on our locals, redicetv.locals.com or subscribestar.com/redice. Get a membership, check out everything that we do, and support the show.